Hey serfs. Now some of us in the contemporary world may not know what that means, but this refers to people on the lower end of the feudal system hierarchy. Think of how medieval kingdoms are usually depicted, and you'll get a decent idea of what it is. By the late 18th to early 19th century, serfdom was on its way out as people generally wanted more civil liberties instead of feeling like slaves, aside from this one large landmass we all know and love. So here we have Tsar Nicholas II, and he's the head honcho of what we call the Russian Empire, and they were a little behind. You see, his grandfather, Tsar Alexander II, was known to be a reformer, lifting a lot of the people out of serfdom. Then again, these newly freed serfs ended up becoming just dirt poor peasants with substantial amounts of debt owed to the landlords. But he tried nonetheless. Despite being known as the Great Reformer, his reputation wasn't the best, enough to send him flying in a cloud of debris and shrapnel. Nicholas's father, the creatively named Tsar Alexander III, basically became the opposite of his predecessor, being known as the Great Repressor and doing anything in his power to oppose reform and repress any dissent using the Okhrana, which is basically the Russian secret police. You think that his father would prepare him for the crown, in case he kicks the bucket and whatnot, but Alexander III decided that Nicholas was too weak and girly to rule. So when he actually did kick the bucket, Nicholas didn't have the expertise to rule effectively. Well, our boy Tsar Nicholas II decided to give it a shot anyway. Turns out, his reign immediately went off the rails. You see, his coronation meant that there would have been a lot of beer and food, which was very enticing for a group of starving peasants. And you know what a large mass of people typically do? Rioting is one thing, but crushing each other to death is another. And crush each other they did. Over 1,000 people died in the ensuing stampede. Tsar Nicholas II, the autocrat he was, decided to stay out of respect for the people after being the cause of a Russian astroworld. Nah, I'm just playing. He decided to party with the French, and as you can tell, he immediately tarnished his image. Nicholas the Bloody aside, he allowed his finance minister, Sergei White, to do whatever he wanted to industrialize the nation and do other stuff to bring the nation back on track. Well, this ended up only introducing a new group of people, workers in poverty. Well, they did what they do best and decided to go on strike. As you can see, things are pretty bad. And how did Nicholas II decide to try and improve his image? Wage war against Japan to distract people from the problems. And that didn't even work since they ended up losing the war, so his reputation pretty much went past the point of no return. Then some guys decided to try and hold a peaceful protest, and then got massacred, thus beginning the 1905 revolution. Well, Tsar Nicholas II reluctantly agreed to share power with the new legislator called the Duma, but he decided to go back on his word and suppress the opposition, making it so the 1905 revolution achieved next to nothing. Failed revolution aside, the Russian economy started to recover and was actually making steady gains. So things must be cool, right? Nah, some homeless dude named Rasputin that apparently had healing powers became good friends with the royal family. The details of the relationship I won't get into. If you know, you know. Scandals aside, the Russian economy was still going up. Then some guy in Europe gets assassinated and starts World War I, dragging Russia into the war due to their alliance with Serbia. Well, Russia being Russia in this time period was totally unprepared for war, making it easier for German forces to make large gains. Seeing the situation deteriorate, our boy Tsar Nicholas decided to become the commander-in-chief of the army, leaving a homeless guy and Nicholas's German wife in charge of the country. Well, things didn't improve and the government eventually collapsed, forcing Tsar Nicholas to abdicate. But the story doesn't end here. To replace the Tsar, the Duma and the local Soviets decided to form the provisional government, led by Alexander Kerensky. Now, before I get into the tomfoolery that is the rise of communists in Russia, we have to first understand the different factions at hand. So among the Marxists we have two primary factions, the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. These names are complete lies though. The Bolsheviks are often in the minority, and vice versa. You see, the Mensheviks were a lot more moderate and diverse in opinions, basically chill communists. The Bolsheviks were a lot more radical and uncompromising, as they were led by Vladimir Lenin. Anyways, the provisional government didn't last very long, as it didn't fulfill many of its promises, such as ending the war and feeding the starving populace. Then a prominent general decided to stage a coup, forcing the provisional government to turn to the Bolsheviks. Well, the uprising failed as soon as it began, but it strengthened the position of the Bolsheviks, who decided to overthrow the government. The new Bolshevik government managed to pull Russia out of the war, but then a civil war broke out between the Bolshevik forces and any form of opposition that decided to unite, known as the White Movement. Anyway, since the Bolshevik forces were more centralized and were led by a man named Leon Trotsky, they defeated the opposition. But it didn't end there. After some shenanigans that led to a massive famine, and with Lenin's declining health, there was some infighting about who was going to succeed him. Lenin did not want fellow Bolsheviks Joseph Stalin to take over, but he took over, mostly because the opposition disappeared and he made friends with the right people. The only other viable rival was Leon Trotsky, but people hated him so he was exiled. And as you know, Russia transformed into the Soviet Union, becoming the centralized and repressive state we all know and love. Anyways, that's all I have to offer for today. Goodbye, and you'll never see me again.